Hi there, it's Bruce here. Today we're going to talk about and cook steak. In the US, steak is different than most I've seen in Ukraine and also different from what I'm told is in Russia. Okay, let's go. We have many different kinds of steak. I'm going to show 5 of my favorites and cook 2 of them different ways. A wonderful but expensive steak is the ribeye. It has much fat in the meat, which makes it tender and juicy when cooked properly. The fat is called marbling. I like ribeye very much. A very popular steak is the New York strip. It has a little less marbling than a ribeye. Most restaurants will offer New York strip steaks. This is a filet mignon. It is also called beef tenderloin. It is very expensive and has much less fat. They're usually smaller than other steaks too. I find that they do not have as much flavor as ribeye and strip, so I save my money and don't buy them. This is a T-bone. On one side is a New York strips, and on the other side is a filet mignon or beef tenderloin. So you have both in one steak. I don't like to pay for bone, so I usually do not buy T-bones. This is a sirloin steak. It might be my favorite steak. It was 1/4 the price of the ribeye. There's little waste, and while there's less marbling, it has a very rich flavor. This steak is too big for me to eat in one meal, so I'll cut it into single serving pieces and freeze them. There are many more different kinds of steaks in the USA, and perhaps I'll make another video about some of them. Now, to cook. These are called petite sirloins. They're small sirloin steaks and often are as inexpensive as larger sirloins. They're closer to what I eat in one meal, but still perhaps too big. I'll show you what I do with leftovers. I'll cook one in a frying pan and cook one outside on the grill. I like my steaks cooked medium rare or medium. That means the meat is pink on the inside. First, we'll go outside. So before we cook the steaks, I like to season them with a little bit of pepper on both sides. So there's some pepper, there's some salt. It looks like a lot of salt, but that's kosher salt, which comes in big flakes, so it really isn't as much as it looks. And there's some salt, maybe not the most even of applications, but good enough. And some pepper. There, the steak is ready to cook. Okay, we're outside, and that's my grill, and this is my new starter. And the first thing I do is put charcoal in the starter. These are little briquettes, they're called briquettes, that I buy in a bag. And then with this starter, I crumple up newspaper and put it in the bottom. There's a bug biting me. Okay, now I have a lighter, and I light the newspaper, and the newspaper will burn and ignite the charcoal briquettes. So once I have the charcoal fire lit, it takes about 25 minutes for the coals to burn and start to glow red the way I want them when I cook. So we'll wait. Okay, you can see that the fire is burning brightly, and then I take it and I dump the charcoal briquettes into the grill. Now I've scraped off the worst of the dirt and crud from the grill grate. And so I put it on the grill and I cover it and let it heat up for 2 minutes. Then, when it's nice and hot, I take a paper towel and some oil. Can't quite see, but I'm sprinkling oil onto the paper towel. And then I rub that paper towel on the hot grate. And you can see a little bit of the oil drips in and causes flames on the coal. That's okay. And that will help keep the meat from sticking to the grate. There's our steak, and it goes on, and we cover it up and cook it for 2 minutes. This steak is about 1 inch or 2.5 centimeters thick, and I want to do it about 4 minutes on the side outside. But after 2 minutes, I'll take it and turn it and cook it for 2 minutes on that side. 2 more minutes, and I will take the steak and turn it. You can see I've got grill marks, those lines on it. And so I want to have crossing grill marks, and so I put the steak that way, put the cover back on, and we will cook it for 2 minutes. Okay, 2 minutes are up, and I come back. Where am I? There I am. And I will turn the steak for the last time, and we'll let it cook for 2 minutes more. The steak is done. So the cover comes off, and I pick the steak up, and I put it on a plate, and I'll just close that because then that will put out the fire, and I will have coals for the next time that I want to make a fire. And here's the steak inside. We always let a steak rest, so I didn't do anything for 5 minutes. And that allows the juices to redistribute in the meat and not run out and make a dry steak. And you can see when I cut it, it's nice and pink on the inside. That would be a medium. Okay, now let's cook a steak inside. I've heated up a pan, and the first thing I'm going to do is cook some vegetables in some oil. And that's because this ends up being easiest. And I have a few mushrooms and some broccoli. And I've just added a little bit of butter because that will help the vegetables taste even better. And then I add a little bit of salt and a little bit of pepper. And I just let them cook. And that doesn't take very long. What I'm looking for is the mushrooms to get a deeper brown and for the broccoli to turn a richer green. There, I think it's almost done. We'll shake it a little bit more. Yeah, that looks pretty good. So I'll put those in a bowl, put my pan back, add a little bit more oil, and then I put salt and pepper on another petite sirloin steak, and I'll put it in, and you notice I put it in first towards me and then laying it away from me so in case any oil splatters, it goes the other way. Now I always use a timer, and in this case I'm going to time 4 minutes on each side because I know I want to cook the steak about 4 minutes on a side, and that should give me a nice medium rare. My pan is on medium heat. Oh, there my timer went off. I reset the timer for 4 minutes, and I turn the steak. Now it has that nice char on the outside. It's not really char, it's just caramelization, but it puts a nice crust on the steak, and that tastes really good. So we'll cook it for 4 more minutes on this side. There's 4 minutes. And now with this steak, because it's as thick as it is, I'm going to take it and just cook it on the side for about a minute. And that will make the side look a little bit prettier. It doesn't need to look pretty, but I wanted to do it anyway. So I'll cook it for about 1 minute on each side. Okay, now on the other side. And it's done. I'll put it on a plate, and I'm going to let that rest for a good 5 minutes. As I mentioned before, the juices redistribute and makes the steak nice and juicy. Now what I'm doing is making a simple pan sauce. And I start with about a half a cup of red wine. And there were all those bits on the bottom of the pan that's called fond. And when you put the wine in, or chicken broth if you want, or beef broth, or veal broth, or whatever you want, but probably not water. It scrapes, you can then scrape up those little bits off the bottom of the pan, the fond, and it gives it a nice flavor. Now, since the wine is boiling, all of the alcohol boils off, so there will be no alcohol by the time this sauce is done. And I change to a whisk, and that helps me scrape up the fond better. I turned down the heat a little bit. This is probably a little below medium. And there, I left it for a while, a couple minutes, and it's thickened a lot. So then what we do is turn the heat off completely. And to that, then we add a little bit of butter with the heat off. And then what we want to do is stir the butter into this sauce. And that will thicken the sauce a little bit more and give it a nice gloss. It'll be a nice glossy sauce. And you just keep everything moving and stir it around while this butter melts. And that helps make sure that you have a really good, nice, thick, rich sauce. And this is about as easy a sauce as you can do. And it's really good. So the sauce is done. I'm going to test it a little bit to see if it needs salt and pepper. And I tested it, and nope, it's just fine. So we'll put a hot pad holder there. I'll put my dinner plate there so that we can see it. Add my vegetables that are still warm. It hasn't been that long. There's my steak, and I'm not going to eat all of it, so I'm going to cut a piece off and save that for leftovers. But then the bigger part, I'll put on the plate. Whoops, if I don't drop it on the floor first. Then we can take the sauce, and I put the sauce around the edge of the plate a little bit, trying to be neat and decorative. And then I'll put a little bit of sauce right on the steak itself. So this is my steak cooked inside with broccoli and mushrooms and a simple red wine pan sauce. Let's take a look. Yeah, see, that is medium rare because it's a deep, deep pink on the inside, and that's what I really like. And that meat, having sat for 5 minutes, is just so juicy and delicious. Cut off a piece and taste it. Yep, pretty delicious. Now, leftovers. This is my leftover piece of steak that I cut off. And I'm going to cut it into thin bits and keep cutting it until I have bite-sized bits. And this is cold, but I could put it in the microwave for a piece of meat this size, about 30 seconds, and then it would be nice and warm. But for me, cold is fine for what I'm doing with this. So that's the thin slices, and now I'm cutting them into bite-sized pieces. And then I'm going to put all of this onto salad. Now, in this case, this is what's called baby spinach. They're young spinach leaves, but they're very good. And I have a blue cheese dressing. And the combination of blue cheese and steak is just wonderful. And the combination of blue cheese and baby spinach is just wonderful. But you could use lettuce. Then, now that that's all mixed together, I'll put the steak on it. So I have that. Add a little bit of salt and a little bit of pepper and some crumbled blue cheese. This is often called a black and blue salad